The growth in Central and Eastern Europe from a GDP perspective is higher than, and more sustainably high than anywhere else in Europe. It's still converging with the standards of living in Western Europe, and this will continue to be a driver of growth. There's some risks to that, some issues associated, particularly on the governance side. What is the government of Poland, and will that affect the level of investment? But economics is clearly the kind of the strength and the kind of key underlying strength behind the story, investment story for this region. The occupier market story is a bit of a complicated one. It's a bit of an issue. So the demand that comes out of the economy is strong, but there's too much space being built, and in many sectors and in many cities. And so this is resulting in the last couple of years, vacancy rates that are steadily ticking up in, for example, Warsaw office. You see, and you see that in other places as well. You see shopping centers that are almost a lack of discipline as to where they're being built, and the planning of behind the master planning in cities is just not really there. So examples of new shopping centers being built right next to large, established, successful, modern shopping centers, and it is very much a tenant's market out there in a lot of markets and a lot of sectors. So both of those feed into the capital markets question for the region. So pre-crisis, there were very small risk spreads, almost no risk spread in the yields between Central Europe and Western Europe. And this was after years of convergence, because it used to be double-digit yields in Central and Eastern Europe, and it compressed to almost nothing. The crisis, it widened out again. But what we've seen since the crisis is it started to compress just a little bit, and then it's stabilized much more. So the kind of capital returned with tremendous strength to the core Western European gateway city markets first, and then it started coming back to the recovery stories, the Spains, the Italys, the Irelands, and it hasn't really come back to Central and Eastern Europe in the same magnitude that it's come back to those places. And so what you've seen is a yield gap widen out again for what the pricing is in Central and Eastern Europe. And part of the issue is that investors look at the market and see all of this supply, and they see softness on the occupier side. And so the way that we are approaching the region right now is to basically look for sectors that have some of the sectors and markets that have some of the supply limitations or lack of supply that we saw in the market in the early days. And so it's not an immediate area that we're expect to see a new deal from HEITMAN tomorrow, but we're very interested in the establishment and creation of a rented residential sector in Central and Eastern Europe, because in some ways, like the UK, but an even more extreme version of it, the residential stock is extremely fragmented, and there's an opportunity to create a modern residential sector. We're interested in the emergence of student housing as a sector. Eventually, senior housing will come to the market in a modern way. And then we're also focused in the conventional sectors and the type of product and the type of markets that really has staying power and a sense of place, where it's not a commodity. So the segments of the market that are commodity product, there's not a sense of place. It doesn't matter where you're on this block or the next block, and it's really a game of musical chairs with tenants, even though the overall footprint of the tenants is increasing because the economic growth is there. There's a sense of just robbing Peter to pay Paul with tenants. We're looking for assets that have such locational stability and sense of place that can really behave in a much more Western European kind of irreplaceable asset type of approach, or assets that are maybe not in that place but have locational or other attributes that they can be, through adding value to them, through improving them, you can make them more like what I just described.